What's going on, everyone? So today is Thursday, which means we got a brand new leader and a bunch of new cards to talk about. Pardon my voice a little bit. I am just getting over a sickness, but we got to talk about these cards, and let's not waste any time. Let's dive right into it. I have a TCG player link in the description down below. Be sure to use it for any other cards you want to pick up, as well as big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Thanks for supporting the channel and all that good stuff. Let's talk about our first card in Soldier of the 501st. It's a 1-cost ground unit in Aggression Heroism. It's a 1/3 Republic Clone Trooper as its traits, and it has Raid 1. It's a very simple, very unassuming card, but I actually think this is one of an important filler piece for these more aggressive Republic decks. The first thing is 1-cost ground units. Usually what you're looking for is a very powerful stat line in terms of power. When I say powerful stat line, right? You really want that 3 power in order for you to trade basically with any of the early plays that the vast majority of people are going to be playing. Now, here's the thing with set 3. There's going to be a lot of tokens, so 2 power is hopefully going to be a little bit better than 3 power was in set 2 and set 1. And same thing goes with 1 power because you'll have battle droid tokens. At the same time, having 1 toughness is extremely weak because of the same thing. On top of that, you also have a lot of leaders and things that deal 1 damage to things randomly. Boss, Darth Vader, you've got the new Quinlan Voss, you've got Cad Bane. It feels like 1 toughness units get weaker and weaker as we go further and further on in the game. The fact this is a 1/3, it has the relevant tags in Republic Clone and Trooper, and it has Raid 1, so it actually attacks as a 2/3, is actually decently strong. And of course, best of all, arguably, is that it actually will help with the coordinate strategy that you're trying to go for, deploying a bunch of things and backing them up with either tricks or whatever you're trying to do. I think this is actually a pretty interesting card and could show up in a few different decks. Next up, we've got Anakin's Interceptor. This is a 2-cost space unit in Aggression Heroism, and it is a 2/3 Jedi Republic vehicle fighter. Well, the base has 15 or more damage on it. This unit gets +2/+0. So the first thing that I thought was really interesting was this is the Jedi trait. Now, we don't really see the Jedi trait all that frequently besides on the Jedis, but this is a space unit with the Jedi tag. Now, there's not really all that many things that care about the Jedi tag specifically, so we may see more as set 3 continues, but I don't think that's going to be relevant. It's just something that I thought was cool. It does, however, have the Republic tag, and that's really important. I'm thinking of this, and a lot of people talked about how X-Wing is going to be kind of phased out because of Anakin's Interceptor. X-Wing in general has been pretty much phased out. There's only a few decks that still play it. This, to me, is not a replacement for X-Wing. X-Wing is played because it has the Rebel tag, and this one does not. So while Anakin's Interceptor is interesting as it becomes a 4/3 a little bit later on in the game, if our base has 15 or more damage on it, that can really help you. But for the vast majority of the times you'll see Anakin's Interceptor, you're going to see it as the 2/3. And it's a 2/3, it's a 2-cost 2/3 in space, which is totally reasonable, and has the Republic tag. So if you care about Republic units, I think this is going to be a staple in those space arena, or when you're kind of crafting your deck and you want a couple space units. I think Anakin's Interceptor makes a complete staple in those decks. It's also pretty good against specific units in the meta, wing leaders. You've got TIE Phantoms that it's really, really good against. It still trades into a lot of the 3/2s that we see, like Mercenary Gunship and all that stuff. So it has a decent stat line. It's just that it's a 2/3, doesn't really have any relevant abilities for the vast majority of the early games, like turns 1 through 3 or so. And that's when you're really going to be seeing these space units alive and attacking. So seems reasonable to me. Happy about it for any Republic deck. Just not something that I'm like, ooh, that is insane. Just seems like a solid card. Next up, we've got Sand Hill, a 6-cost ground unit in Cunning Villainy. It's a 3/7 Separatist official. It has Exploit 3, and on attack for each friendly unit that was defeated this phase, ready a friendly resource. So the coolest thing I've seen with this card is using it with ECL. Again, any 6-cost unit or below, you got to think about it with ECL. If you think about it, 6 cost 3/7, probably not going to be killing anything, but the cool thing about it is that it costs 6 and you can exploit 3. So let's say you have 3 battle droid tokens, you exploit 3, you go ahead and defeat all those units, you get a 6 drop, but then you ECL it out, boom, suddenly you can get 3 resources back. That's pretty cool. And now you've got a 3/7 plus a 3 resource play. But also, just playing this earlier on into the game, like let's say you go turn 1, play a thing, turn 2, battle droid escort, turn 3, you play Sandhill for free, like literally for free, and then you play a 4 resource play. This is something that I'm really interested in. I don't know if the on attack triggers are actually going to be all that good. If it was a 4/7, I'd be much more excited about it because there's going to be way more things that I can actually kill. But because it's the 3/7, it's not really going to be all that great in combat, and it's not really going to get that many on attack triggers. The thing that I think is exciting is the fact that it's a separatist unit, it's an official, and you can essentially play it for free if you have that kind of exploit setup, which, well, doesn't seem that unrealistic to me. Again, turn 1, play a unit, turn 2, battle droid escort, turn 3, you literally get to play this for free. Or actually, heck, you could literally play this for free on turn 2, because if you have the battle droid escort and you have the other units, it's free. It's literally free by sacrificing those 3 units, and suddenly you have a 3/7 on turn 2, right? Like that could absolutely happen. I'm guessing it's going to be like turn 3, generally speaking, you're going to get this down. But heck, maybe turn 3, you get another exploit thing down, and suddenly you play that and you attack and you get, I don't know, 1, 2 resources in addition, and you get to play another event or another ground unit. This is very intriguing to me. Any card that is literally free while using its abilities intrigues me. And this one isn't easy to kill. It's just that it doesn't do that much damage, but maybe that's good enough. Having 7 toughness, maybe getting a little bit of value here and there, but just having a separatist and an official on the battlefield, there's a few different things that care about those tags, specifically separatist in set 3. And so having just this big booty separatist that's going to be sitting on the battlefield for a while seems like really advantageous. Next up, we got a new event in Political Pressure. It's a 1-cost cunning event. Choose an opponent. They may discard a random card from their hand. If they do not, you create 2 battle droid tokens. So I know a lot of people are really excited about this card. Anytime you have the option of giving the choice to your opponent, or I guess not option, but whenever a card gives the choice to your opponent, I'm a little bit more wary about it because, of course, your opponent gets to choose which one is less bad for them. 1-cost event, create 2 battle droid tokens. I would think that would be an absolute staple in basically every single exploit deck. Creating 2 battle droid tokens for 1 resource essentially is 1 resource, create 3 resources, or create 4 resources, right? That is kind of how you look at it. So I would think that would be extremely impressive. But also, discarding a random card from your hand isn't that big of a deal. Some decks really care to play on curve, and so they can't necessarily afford to discard a card at random. But let's say later on in the game, your opponent's probably just like, yeah, create 2 battle droid tokens, I don't care. And early on in the game, they're probably just like, yeah, I'll just discard a random card from your hand. I could see this getting a little bit of value, and depending on the right archetype, like, you will get value from it. Discarding a random card from your opponent's hand does do something. And creating 2 battle droid tokens does do something. My worry about this is it's not really going to be a card that you can rely on and build a deck around with this in mind. And that's something that's going to be really, really tricky to build around. So maybe just like a mid-game value card where you're like, oh, I hit a card or I make some tokens and I generate some resources in that way. I'm not sure. Next up, we got Private Manufacturing. It's a 2-cost event, completely neutral. Draw 2 cards. If you control no token units, put 2 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck in any order. So basically a 2 resource, draw 2 if you are a token deck. If you're not, then it's a 2 resource, look at the top 2 cards and put them into your hand and then put 2 cards back. It's kind of like a brainstorm from Magic, but without the upside of actually replacing itself. 2-cost event that draws you 2 cards in a token deck. I could see that doing some work. the thing about this is that it doesn't really do what your token decks want to do. Your clone trooper token decks, generally speaking, want to be generating bodies, getting more coordinate synergies down. You don't want to be using resources to draw cards. And your battle droid decks really don't want to have a ton of events because you're trying to look to exploit, and you need the exploit setup on top of the actual exploit payoffs and then to match up. And you don't want to dilute the deck with anything that's not doing those two things. Maybe there's some sort of control deck where you get a card down and it creates a couple tokens, you start trading off with it and use private manufacturing as a way to draw a couple cards, or a soft control deck that can get some value out of this. But we have other things like Death Mark, which just draw you 2 cards by killing a unit. I don't really see this as exceptionally valuable. Like, oh, I'm gonna want this in X deck. Maybe there's some sort of like soft control or like mid-range token value deck that does use draw 2 cards, but drawing 2 cards isn't even that impressive. So I'm not really thinking that this is going to be a extremely powerful card by any means. Next up, we got Tri-Droid Suppressor. 7-cost ground unit in Cunning. It's a 4/7 Separatist droid vehicle walker. It's got exploit 2, and when played, you exhaust enemy ground unit. So exploit 2 means that this can cost 3 potentially. And I'm noticing that there's a lot of exploit synergy within Cunning. And Cunning seems to have a little bit of a focus towards exploit specifically. Now, of course, there's some exploit cards in Command and token generators and all that, but it seems like there's a little bit more of a focus in Cunning. This to me seems pretty average to like kind of mid. I guess mid and average would be the same. Like a little bit less than average is where I'm rating Tri-Droid Suppressor. So you play it as a 3-cost ground unit. Let's say you exploit it 2, you get a 4/7. It doesn't really match up on the curve all that well. And what I mean by that is like turn 1, you're probably not going to be able to get 2 bodies down reliably and keep them on the battlefield without your opponent taking initiative and probably killing one of them, which means that you're not going to be able to exploit this out on turn 2, which means that the stat line is going to get steadily worse as you get deeper into the game, or you're going to be playing this on turn 3, and if you are, you have to have something to use that 1 additional resource on, because again, it'll cost you 3 resources on a 4-resource turn, which means you're wasting it. Not as exciting. I would much prefer this to have cost 6 resources, where you get to do some sort of play a 1-drop on turn 2 and be able to exploit the Tri-Droid Suppressor out. That to me seems a lot more powerful, and you do want to play this at the beginning of a turn as well, because you want to be able to exhaust enemy ground unit, which does take away some of the cool things you could be doing, like attack with stuff first, then exploit this out, etc. It does have the Separatist tag. It is a fat body, which we talked about with Sandhill, that might be something you might want to consider, but there are a lot of exploit options, and I think Tri-Droid Suppressor is going to be kind of the more average exploit payoffs in the options that we have. Next up, we got Bold Resistance. This one's pretty sweet. We got a 3-cost event in Aggression Heroism. Choose up to 3 units that share the same trait. Each of those units gain +2/+0 for this phase. Trait meaning Rebel, Republic, whatever, something like that. This is a big pump. +2/+0 is a lot of damage. And the other thing about this, because we've seen like Rallying Cry, which gives raid 2 to all your units, and that thing was like never played. We've also seen the Bounty Hunter one that allows you to attack units. This one doesn't have any restrictions in terms of attacking units or base. It also gives the stat points to those units directly, and those are 2 big things that needed to change with the previous versions of these types of cards that we've had. You really want to be giving the stats to the character or to the unit immediately, because one of the things that your opponent wants to do is you use their units to kill your units, right? Let's say you give raid 2 to everything, and then you're like, okay, I'm about to get in for this massive swing. If your opponent kills your unit, well, suddenly you didn't get any value out of that raid 2, and you're going to need quite a few units in order for these effects to work. Now, with set 3, we're going to have a bunch of tokens, and if I'm thinking about this, like, you make a couple of Clone Trooper tokens, it's like turn 3, turn 4, having 4 power Clone Trooper tokens is relevant, and that might be enough to go ahead and get in for a ton of damage. I'm not 100% convinced by this card yet, because again, we've seen a lot of these different cards, and they're usually not that great, but This, if there's a set that's going to support this idea, I think it'll be set 3 with like clone trooper tokens and things like that. But the last thing we got to talk about is the brand new leader in Wat Tambor. I am extremely excited about this leader, okay, guys? So we have a command villainy leader with an action. If a friendly unit was defeated this phase, give a unit +2/+2 for this phase. No resources attached. It's a separatist official, and he's a 5 to flip leader. He's a 3/6 when he flips, and he says on attack, if a friendly unit was defeated this phase, you may give another unit +2/+2 for this phase. So let's talk about that front side action, as it's really, really quite interesting. We haven't really seen anything close to this yet. The whole idea behind this is, well, we're in villainy. We have battle droid tokens. They're either going to die or they're going to be exploited away. But I kind of like the idea that, okay, let's say you play this in a standard mid-range deck and you're trading off units. This is a way to just get massive chunks of damage into your opponent's base. And let's just say you're playing like a normal Boba green deck back in like set 1. Set 2's more like higher value later gameplays, but you're trying to curve out, you got a couple units. Your units are suddenly able to trade up way more efficiently if they're weaker units, or again, you can just end the game a lot quicker. And with set 3, not only will you have those mid-range threats, but you also will have battle droid tokens. You'll also have these other things that are going to be dying all the time. And one of the things about these like pump effects, and I talked about this with the bold resistance card, this just gives you the stat points, and it also gives you the toughness alongside it, so it's even more likely to survive so that it can actually get in an attack. This seems pretty strong. If I'm just going to trade off a unit, give some +2/+2 to another unit, suddenly I'm able to get in for an extra 2 damage into their base. That seems pretty powerful. Now, when you flip him, 5 to flip 3/6 is nice, okay? I would have loved to see him being able to give the +2/+2 to himself. That would have been absolutely sweet, turning him into a 5/8, okay? But he's not going to be doing that. Instead, you're going to need multiple units out and one that was defeated in order to get the on attack trigger. But I still think that this could be a nice way to just get in a lot of additional damage, either continuing on with the exploit synergies, or again, just going wide and relying on a bunch of these random units that are dying all the time to get some extra damage in. Add to that, he is a separatist that comes down early on, guaranteed in every game that you have. I am very hopeful for this in a more aggro, more aggro mid-range command villainy deck, separatist deck that is, that's either just deploying a lot of threats and having things that just die all the time, or maybe even having minor exploit synergies alongside it to get some value going. Do I think this is a strong leader? I think it's a little bit above average, not like that much above average, but I am pretty excited about this one. Just as I'm excited about, Count Dooku and a couple of other ones. This is one of those leaders that I'm like, ooh, I am looking forward to build around this card because I think it actually can do some major work. But let me know what you all think in the comments section down below. I'll make sure I don't have any other cards to talk about. What do you think about Soldier of the 501st, Anakin's Interceptor, Sandhill, Political Pressure, Private Manufacturing, Tri-Droid Suppressor, Bold Resistance, and of course the new leader, Wat Tambor, guys. I am excited about Wat Tambor. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you all for the next one.